So, Dandy's World, a game that I have talked about before and got a lot of information wrong. I'm not going in depth here, but point being, I've talked about it before. And the time in between that video and now, I've learned more and gotten more into the game. To the point I've burnt myself out and didn't get any of the Christmas tunes aside from Ruby. The day I lock in and grind for a main, I will disappear off the internet. Point being, I've looked more into the game and the community, partly. I know the strawberry and the cookie gachizo kiss, apparently, but something you probably wouldn't think would be a thing for a mascot horror game, let alone a mascot horror game on Roblox, is creepypastas. Now, it's not to say there aren't creepypastas about other mascot horror games. FNAF has some that are meant to be either written in-universe, or, gays, I went to scatgames.org and downloaded FNAF 0 and got the hyper-realistic Ash baby and I got scared and cried. Bendy, the only technical creepypasta I've seen, is the mod Out of the Ink Machine, or also called the 2017 prototype, which is more digital horror / fan game or mod, but has heavy creepypasta-like vibes to it. Hello Neighbor, moving on. Banban, aside from the optimization, yes, I did save this joke for Banban, on YouTube at least has more than one result, but I didn't say I wouldn't pick favorites. I have found the April Fool's 2026 video, and Poppy has some, but I can't speak much about them aside from they exist. And Indigo Park probably doesn't have any because at the time of writing, Chapter 1 is released and we have hints of Chapter 2. So why am I talking about Dandy's World ones? Well, aside from it being pretty interesting that a mascot horror series has a large creepypasta scene with it, but also unique characters instead of blank.exe. I said unique, not creative. But before I get ahead of myself, I should probably say how many I will be covering today. And since I'm hoping to have this out by October, I say as I write this part of the script in February, I will be covering 4 creepypastas today, and seeing what made them so popular. But before we begin, if you enjoy this and want more like it, subscribe. You know the basic YouTuber junk by now. Alright, with that out of the way, let's start with... So, Frowning Goob. If the story didn't give it away, it's about the character Goob. A character that takes a decent while to get, and is either seen being a distractor or extractor. They also have the ability to grab players and bring them closer to him, called Hug, which is kind of cute. He's also my favorite. But what does that have to do with the creepypasta? Well, Goob is canonically very happy and joyous, and seeing him sad is spooky, I think. Yeah, having a character like Goob is probably the last one you would expect to have a creepypasta. But if Sonic.exe has proven anything, is that you don't have to be well written to be a popular creepypasta. But with that out of the way, let's start with the story. Or not. Okay, so I originally thought there was going to be like a written story because this result from the wiki, but turns out it was just art. Good art, but not a story. So if I'm going to have to watch videos about this and gather information, then...
I've been expecting.
Where's that?
So after a few videos, you know, maybe that Sonic.exe joke wasn't too off. I'm joking, but compared to other Dandy's World creepypastas, Frowning Goob isn't really that bad. Don't get me wrong, a random NPC spawning in a private server, or in normal game, or roleplay mode, is scary, but they don't really do much aside from spawning and just being there. Like, say you heard his ability sound go off somewhere across the map. then suddenly you get pulled down out of bounds or into the void. That would be scary, and have something to actually be afraid of. But before we get sidetracked, let's move on to the next creepypasta. Hey, post-writing this part Cole here, while researching for the next pasta, I found a wiki for Danny's World creepypastas, different from the one I mentioned earlier. There's not much here of note for Frowning Goob, aside from saying a danger level of 4, and a chant to summon him, which seems to be a thing with almost every pasta, at least the ones based off like different characters, being able to summon them. I just thought I mentioned this here because I'll be using it for the rest of the pastas. But yeah, okay, on to the next one. So, Lost Tisha, I think that's how you pronounce their name. The one I think is either the most popular or third most popular. The point being, it's the one you probably most associate with Danny's World creepypastas, and probably my second favorite out of this whole video. And the first with a original model, not counting the turning the frowning face down on Frowning Goob. But also the first one with its, I assume, original story on the wiki, which I will be reading. So let's start with, for real this time, the story. Part 1. The story begins with a Tisha player with the lavender maid skin named Jazz, also known as Jay. She was doing a run seemingly early game. As Jazz walks through the map, Lost Tisha herself would be watching from a distance. Jazz noticed, but Lost Tisha was in a dark area, making it hard to see her. Jazz would see random dark spots all over the map, and eventually encounter Lost Tisha again, who was hostile this time. She killed Jazz in one hit, similar to Twisted Dandy. In the That's a Wrap screen, instead of the stats being shown, they were all gone, replaced with large bold text saying, "She got you." Jazz went into spectator mode so she could return to the lobby, and saw Lost Tisha herself, standing there. Deciding made her panic and press the return to lobby button in a rush, and she was teleported. There, her screen glitched for a bit in a high contrast before it went back to normal, and Lost Tisha was standing at a floor at the end of the hall. No other players in sight. Her and Flowers would get a lot in common. Part 2. Continuing from Part 1, Lost Tisha stood at the end of the hall in the lobby, and she would extend her arms to grab onto the walls to get closer to Jazz. For a minute, Lost Tisha's head was seen in a red backdrop, seemingly holding the camera before it cut back to the game. Only this time, Lost Tisha's perspective. Lost Tisha had presumably left its own body and entered the one of Tisha, the character Jazz was playing as. It seems as if it had traded its dark, horrific body for a new one in well condition. Out of nowhere with the steel chair. Part 3. Jazz rejoined the game, playing as Lavender Maid Tisha again, which is weird because the last part she and Lost Tisha swapped bodies. She was in her private server waiting for her friend, You, the letter. This was recorded while the Christmas event was going on, and was in the Christmas tree. Lost Tisha herself was looking down at her inside the tree. By this moment, her friend had already joined. However, it was not You, but E, a vintage GG. Why her friends just normal letters? Before Jazz got disconnected from the game, she took a screenshot of E asking her if she wanted to do a run with her. Shortly after, E sent Jazz a photo of lost Tisha chasing her and saying she had been disconnected from the game as well. E thought Jazz was pranking her, but Jazz claimed she wasn't, and it's her again. E seems to be familiar with lost Tisha, as she responded with LT, showing how E already knows of lost Tisha's existence. However, this was likely E's first encounter with lost Tisha, since she was confused and thought Jazz was pranking her at first. And that's where the story ends. I do like how this one is way more interesting and with an actual unique design and model. But that's pretty much all I have to say, really. It's definitely an interesting story. But with that out of the way, let's move on to the next one.
You know what that means? Fish! You know what that means? Fish! You know what that means? Fish!
So, Finks the Fishbowl, or just Figs, which I think is how you pronounce it, is about Finn, and is one that is pretty distinct from the previous two, in that this one has its own game dedicated to it, which I will get to later. But first, let's read off the lore on the wiki page. Not story, lore. You know, the more this video goes on, the more I'm convinced some of these authors don't know what a creepypasta is. But anyways, moving on, Fink's lore is, after many failed attempts to improve the tunes, Delilah came up with the idea to inject human blood into the tunes as a last-ditch effort. The first victim was Finn, due to it being pretty easy to have the blood injected into him, because he's a fishbowl. It did indeed improve in agility, stealth, and strength, but not his sanity. That's it? No, I mean seriously, I thought there would be more. I mean, it's not bad, and does give a good background as to why the fishbowl character, who is 99% water, suddenly is now producing blood. But with that, we should probably move on to the game. Or not. Are you fucking kidding? So, where's the game? Well, searching up the game name, now you get a result, but not the one on the wiki. So what gives? Well, it's actually a common trend with Danny's World fan games being shot on sight. What I mean is, seemingly with many or all Danny's World fan games, they all get taken down by Rush Crush Studio, I'm assuming, the devs behind Danny's World. Now, I have heard reasons as to why this happens, the main one being stolen assets, mainly models, which would be a fair reason to take them down if majority of fan games didn't use original models. Like, for example, Shelly's World, Astro's Galaxy, and even the Finks game. The only one I've seen that only does the bare minimum with little effort is Sprout World, in that they apparently just do slight edits and recolors of the models. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, the game's down, so we're gonna have to watch a video of the game. So...
What?
There's one thing I gotta warn you about! He's here!
So why did this get taken down? No, seriously, like, there's almost nothing related to base Danny's World aside from doing tasks and getting to the elevator. And the character designs, not models, because Gigi seems to have an original model, and Finks, take a guess. But moving on, what was the gameplay like? Well, you have to do 4 generators to help power on an elevator and escape. And you do have items to slow or even lose him in a chase, which is pretty cool. But when you do escape, Finks does a little speech about us getting away and that we'll see him again. But that's pretty much it for Finks. Neat story with a now non-existent fan game, because, you know. But we still have one more to talk about, that is very interesting, and that is... So this is probably the most interesting one out of the others we've covered. Interesting because it's a actually fully written creepypasta, and that is not on the wiki. It's the first that isn't character focused. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get into it. So if you're like me, you probably have heard of or played Roblox before, either in your free time, with friends, or play it because you grew up with it, or got into it from a popular game on the platform. Point is, you know what it is. And there's a game me and my friend played that is semi-popular, but something strange happened. This game was called Danny's World. For the sake of keeping her anonymous, I'll just refer to her as Amber. Amber was more into the game than me, having a lot more of the characters and more experience. So a lot of the runs involved me trying to figure out the game and dying a lot. Amber didn't mind and found it really funny. But during one run, that's when it happened. During this run, Amber was hiding from a Twisted behind a box before getting randomly taken to a different game. I was obviously confused by this, even more so when Amber said she'd never seen this before or even knew this was in the game. I asked her where she was hiding before getting taken to the game, and she said where on the map before letting out a horrified scream. I found where she was, and her character was still in the game. I didn't question it and got taken to the game, and was a little taken aback. I loaded into the game, and it was the lobby, but more saturated and stuck in first person, and looked around the map, noticing it seemed to have a more dilapidated and overgrown look. I also noticed Amber had gone quiet, concerningly quiet. I said her name to try to get her attention, and I heard her jump a little, and the only thing she said was, "Casey, either leave the game or keep playing if you want, but please come over when you're done. I need you. This is messing with me." I heard her whimper before leaving the call. In hindsight, I should have immediately got up off my ass and drove straight to her house, but regrettably, I stayed and decided to keep playing, hoping I could at least figure out what messed up Amber. Exploring more of the map, I didn't find anything. Aside from one of the elevators having a light on, and the only ambience being this hushed, almost whisper-like noise. I couldn't make out what it was saying, if it was even trying to say anything at all, so I decided to go into the elevator. The elevator slowly descends instead of just teleporting you into the actual game, and the whispers got more and more audible as it descended. I couldn't make out much originally, but the more and more it got to the floor, I was able to make out a few things. "You're not it. She won't like you. Another one to the pile. You both shouldn't have come here." I didn't know what the whispers meant, if it meant anything at all, but the elevator finally reached the floor, and as it opened, the whispers got louder and images started flashing on the screen. I felt my head start to throb and my fight or flight going to hell off, and I see a human character standing before a loud screech in the Roblox kick message appear. The text box says, "Error, unable to load section Otherworld, Psycho Level 2. Please check Studio for proper script." I threw my headphones off and just sat there in shock, trying to process what just happened, what any of that meant, if it meant anything at all. I only got out of my trance hearing my phone ring and saw it was Amber. I completely forgot about Amber. I quickly got my keys and drove over to her house. I greeted her mom and asked if Amber was doing alright. She said she was a little shaken up, but doing a little bit better than earlier. I quickly went into her room and Amber immediately hugged me. I hugged her back and felt her trembling. Badly. I gently sat her down on her bed and she calmed down a little. There was a long silence with Amber's occasional whimpers. After a while, I finally felt comfortable enough to ask her what she saw to get her like this. Amber hesitated before starting to describe what she saw. What she said was pretty much the same as what I saw until the elevator opened. Amber described the same feeling I got, but the human character didn't let out a loud screech, but slowly turned its head. Amber said it resembled the character Delilah, but her lower jaw was covered in a black maroonish color, and her left eye was red like the normal Twisteds in the game, despite her right eye being normal. Delilah then said to Amber, "Welcome to the other world, darling," before flashing images like I saw and let out the loud screech, and giving Amber the kick message, but this time saying, "Error, unable to load section Otherworld entrance layer 1. Please check studio for proper script." I look at Amber confused, trying to make sense of what she said and why this would be in a game like Dandy's World of all things. Amber then said she recorded what she described, and I walked over to check her computer and watched the recording, and everything was as she said. But that still didn't answer why. Why would this be in the game? Was it a leftover idea they forgot to cut for some reason? Was it a leftover secret no one found but us? Was it a very cruel setup for an ARG? What is this? Suddenly I hear a notification from Discord? I open it to see Amber and my account get added to a group chat called Danny's Otherworld Investigation Team. And the, I assume, creator of the group started typing. After a while, sent this message. "Hello. I know you're both probably confused and maybe concerned about being added to a random group chat, but there's nothing to be worried about. We're a group that, if the name didn't give it away, are trying to document and figure out this random occurrence few people have encountered in Dandy's World. If you two would be comfortable, we would like for you to share what you witnessed. Again, if you're comfortable with sharing." I stare at the message, both surprised and utterly dumbfounded. I look back at Amber and she nods her head, and I start typing and reply with, "Hello, this is my friend's account, but that doesn't really matter. Like you said, we had experienced whatever the hell you described it as. My experience was slightly less intense and gave me a small headache, but my friend got it worse," shaking her up a little bit. She recorded her experience, so here's that footage. I sent the footage and didn't get a reply for a while. I eventually got a call from my mom and stepped out of Amber's room to answer. "Hey Mom, what's up?" "Casey, honey, are you alright? Are you safe?" "Yeah, I'm at Amber's house. Why?" "Apparently some maniac broke into the house." My eyes widened. I immediately started to think of how or why this happened. This isn't my fault, right? I thought I locked the door, and honey, this wasn't your fault. The door was locked. Apparently the person broke through the back window. The security was on, and your father got home soon after the police." Okay, do you want me to come back?" "That would be good. The police would probably have some questions, and you probably should pack some clothes." "Why?" "Well, me and your father are still planning on visiting your aunts in the mountains, but according to what your father had been told, it's best you also are out of the house, just in case another break-in happens." I thought the cops got the guy. Oh, they did, honey, but according to your father, he said they would recommend we stay out for a week or two while to keep watch, just in case. Where'd this guy break out from for us to be out of the house for a week? They said possibly a mental hospital, and he was wearing a purple box helmet. I felt my heart stop for a second hearing that. There's no way, right, that me and Amber find this weird secret in a game with a character that has a purple box head and some mental patient escapes and breaks into my house wearing a purple box on their head? That's just happenstance, right? Casey, you alright? Yeah, just trying to make sense of this. Oh, don't stress yourself over this. I'm just happy you weren't home when this happened. Yeah, thankfully. Well, just come on by when you can so you can pack and answer these questions. She hung up and I poked my head back into Amber's room and told her everything. She cycles from looks of both concern and thankfulness. She nods, understanding everything, and I step back and close the door to her room. I jump a little, seeing Amber's mom standing there. Well, that sounds like an issue. Jesus, did you hear all that? I did, honey. And from what it sounds like, you're going to be staying here for a while. Yeah, wait, what? Oh, don't be so surprised. I'd be more than happy to have you stay for a week or two while the police get this whole mess figured out. I'll tell you what, I get a pizza ordered, and you go and get everything sorted. So when you get back, dinner will be hot and ready. I stare at her, both stunned and appreciative of her suggesting this. You don't have to, really. I can probably just ask my older sister or grandparents if it's alright if... Casey, honey, please, I insist. Plus, it'll be nice to have you and Amber here. You're both so good to each other. But really, I don't mind. So I'll get out your hair now. And tell your mom I said hello. She walked down the hall, opening her phone to, I assume, order the pizza. And I stand there still a little shocked. Well, I guess that solved where I'm going to stay. I eventually walked out to my car and drove back to my house. Finally getting back home and getting out of my car, I say hi to my mom and told her that I'm staying at Amber's house. And that her mom said hi. And walk over to the police officer and answer his questions. They were all pretty standard, but he mentioned empty blood bags being in the bushes, and I stare at him confused, obviously. The officer walked me inside, and I turned and froze. A sentence written in, I'm hoping was only the blood from the blood bags. The sentence said, "Come back, Casey. We have so much we want to do with you." There is no way. There's no way this random fucked up secret in a game with a character that's just named Goob can cause this. How? The officer tapped my shoulder and I unfroze. I finished answering his questions and went to my room to pack for the weeks. I get done and say goodbye to my parents and drove back to Amber's house. It's been a week since all this had happened. Amber's been getting better, but she still is a little on edge and hasn't even opened Roblox, let alone Dandy's World, which I don't blame her. Me and the, I still assume, main person behind the investigation group have been trying to contact a psychiatrist to help us figure out if there's a link between the flashing images and the break-in at my house. Our only guess is there might have been some sort of subliminal messages behind them or something to that degree. We don't know. I'm just hoping I can just move on from this, hopefully, eventually. So that was interesting, to say the least. I liked it. I don't have much to say. Just, it was interesting, good, but yeah, so let's just move on. So, in conclusion, Danny's World creepypastas are interesting, to say the least, with some being very interesting and really good, with Finks and the one we just read, while some are cool but could have been better executed, like Lost Tisha and Frowning Goob. Again, maybe for Frowning Goob, that Sonic the XC comparison wasn't too off. But I do know the Danny's World fandom does have a lot of younger players, so the flaws could easily just come down to lack of experience, which is probably the case. But before ending this one, I did want to give an honorable mention to one I couldn't include, and that one being Party Pebble. Now, Party Pebble, I find somewhat interesting, and I really like the idea of it. The idea of it being about a skin that was added before and quickly removed. Now, there's stuff about it stalking you both in-game and IRL and social media, which that does drag it down for me. But the initial idea of a skin that gets quickly removed and going from there can work and could easily be done right. But I think we should end it there for today. If you made it to the end, thank you. And if you're new, subscribe. And happy spooky month, everybody.